Everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Wedding Film School Show. My name is Jared Haskell, here again with Mr. Jason McCutcheon and a very special guest. But before we dive in, Jason, why don't you read today's sponsor?
Today we are, as always, being brought to you by Second Society. Head over to secondsociety.io if you are a second shooter and you would like to work with other amazing filmmakers, or if you are a filmmaker who's looking to hire a second shooter, head over to Second Society. It's a really, really awesome platform made by filmmakers who understand the industry, who care about the industry, who care about you getting a job, having a sustainable job. And if you use our code WFS3, you get 3 free months of the VIP membership, which gives you various benefits. So head over there, that's our website. No, you could go to our website too, but go to secondsociety.io and sign up today.
So our guest today is a very close friend of ours, friend of the Wedding Film School Show, friend of all of our multiple brands. Jason, you want to introduce our guest today?
Yes, this is a person who not only do I respect professionally, but I very care a lot about as a person who's, like, I would say, as close to family as you get in the wedding industry. And so this is Keri Ketterer from, should I say Always Yours, or should we do Keri Ketterer?
We should do Keri Ketterer, Walter & Co.
Yes. So she has a couple different things going on, but how you doing, Keri?
I'm good. Thank you guys so much for that really kind introduction. You guys are like family too. I'm very appreciative for you saying that, Jay.
I know that would be very meaningful to you, but it's also true.
Oh, well, we do get to work on some really cool things together, but then it's also really nice to see you guys outside of work as well.
Yeah, I mean, we both we all live in New England. We all live in Massachusetts. Well, not you, but you're from Massachusetts.
You're so close.
So close. You're almost back. But yeah, so it's cool, like, when the people in your market are also doing cool stuff as well.
So, Keri, I'm kind of new to this new venture of yours.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just hearing about it right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I didn't know. I don't think I knew about this.
I did tell him.
Tell me while you tell our audience just kind of what's going on in Keriland.
So I am, as you know, the owner of Always Yours events that we refer to as Always Yours. And we have been in operation since, oh my goodness, 2014. And for a while, it was a one-woman show. Then it turned into a firm, planning, designing, and managing all of our events from coast to coast in tents and in venues. However, we have a new venture this year that has been in the works for a long time. So I have to say I've been kind of keeping it a secret for a while. But for the last year and a half, 2 years, we've been working on KKW & Co. or Keri Ketterer, Walter & Co. And that is going to be our brand that is going to focus solely on private estate and tented weddings. Yes. And weddings in really challenging locales. So some of those locations that would require heavy production. And then Always Yours is going to be working mostly in venues and venues that already have tents on site.
Love it.
And that's going to be primarily our team operating the planning. So pushing the bus forward with the planning. And I'll be working on the design. And then Keri Ketterer, Walter & Co. is going to be all tents.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So as you heard, if you're listening to this, Keri has mentioned tenting and private estate and a lot of these things a lot. And I don't know, I think this would be accurate to say you kind of specialize. Some would say tented. I would more say in like private estate kind of weddings. For those that are like maybe not familiar, kind of describe what your ideal like wedding is like.
So yes, you are correct. Tenting is definitely my primary specialty, and it's what my focus is in, specifically at private homes. So the idea really behind my specialty is that not only are we tenting, but we're also going to somebody's private property, whether it's an estate, a home, open land, and we're building a tent and wedding in a structure or sailcloth from the ground up. So highly nuanced events, usually very intricate, heavy in production, heavy design, and very, very much focused on immersive guest experience. So has a different approach to planning to it. These types of events are really focused on taking a place where there is no infrastructure and putting luxury infrastructure and putting that in place. That is quite the task.
Yeah.
And very, very challenging, but As you guys know, I love a challenge. So I welcome it. I love it. And that's why I specialize in it.
Yeah. It's almost like it's storytelling.
It is. It's storytelling. And it's also, I kind of see it as the opportunity to give couples the ability to host an event that is so meaningful to them in a place that is so meaningful to them that they can welcome their guests to and experience it with them. There's always this ever-present nostalgia at home too, or in a property that you've loved and you've experienced, and you just want to share your memories and the history and everything that makes up the tapestry of that location. So I think that that's something that really attracts me to this type of event as well.
So something that I've learned from doing a lot of events with you is the tenting aspect, is the construction aspect of this. Like, I don't think a lot of people who see tents think construction. They think, oh, you just throw some poles in the ground. But as you get closer, you realize like they've literally leveled the ground.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like landscaping that goes into it. Like this is a year or 2 years out. You're kind of like putting stakes in the ground, laying out a roadmap for what goes into it. And I think a lot of planners even maybe look at tents and they think like, okay, you just put in a tent, you're working with the tent company. But also it's like without the construction aspect, there's only so far you can get, right? Like the reason why your designs really pop and you can do something that's super unique is probably due to the construction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to like deal with these people. You have to, there's only so much you can get without really having a construction team. So like, how would you tell someone who's maybe a planner who's like, hey, I am interested in creating these events that are at a higher level, maybe higher budget, working with a construction company, like how does someone kind of like generate a relationship with that type of team?
Yeah.
Like, what does that even look like?
What is the difference between, because I think when a lot of people hear tented, they think like the tent at the venue that's at the
it's up year round or
as like
whatever.
A concrete slab that the tent's on.
But I've even been to private estates and it's literally just stakes in the ground, grass, like there's no construction to it. It's just.
But how does a person know when how did you become a person who even understands how to this engineering side?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it works.
Well, I was very, very young. I was 19, and I was working for a wedding planner on the Cape. And Cape Cod has almost no venues on it. There's 4, essentially.
Yep.
And most people really want to have their weddings at home on the Cape. They usually live on a beautiful piece of property. Born and raised on the Cape. We had a beautiful piece of land, oceanside. So many people have this and they want to welcome their guests there. So when I was working for that planner on the Cape, I was exposed to a lot of tented weddings. And I will be honest to your point, mostly, put up a sailcloth tent, no floor, throw in some tables, call it a day. That's kind of, at the time also, the year that it was, that's what tenting really was. Being exposed to this at such a young age of 19 and 20, I was a hustler. Like I was the grinding, like getting it done, So it was honestly really something that I enjoyed. And then as I went to Boston University for event management and PR. And when I was there, we had to do quite a few internships as part of our graduation requirements. So I went to work at a few luxury planning firms in the city for those internships. And it just so happened that they were mostly doing large-scale productions and tenting. And because I had experience in them, my bosses at the time tended to put me in that sphere of work under their companies. And so I only sharpened the saw and kept sharpening the saw. And when you keep building upon that type of experience and education, that hands-on learning, you very compounding habits, you grow. And all of a sudden, sailcloth tents and a framed tent was easy to me. That was nothing. And the next thing you know, it's structures and elevated floors and going into a property where we really shouldn't be tenting whatsoever and tenting there. And
Okay, so stop there. You say that kind of stuff a lot, which I 100% know that you know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So describe to me the property that you shouldn't be tenting.
Oh my gosh, this is a great question. And anybody who's in New England is going to resonate with this so much. Most properties on the water, you should not be tenting at. There's two parts to this. If you are on a lake, most likely, like this is so technical, but most likely the lake was made by a glacier at some point, and your property most likely slopes quite a bit towards the water. And if that is the case, that means that we need to elevate the floor to be level. And most people don't realize just how much their
Go
property
take
slopes.
80 of your 4 chairs and try to put it on a hill and see what happens to your grandma.
Do you know what type of core workout that would be for
Yeah.
all of your guests?
Yeah,
Just,
yeah.
Trying to hold it in. We'd have to be doing like Pilates.
I think
like,
your grandma would be rolling down the hill.
I know. Some people just roll right backwards. But that's a great example. You know, you don't realize it, but that slope, and for the size of your tent, is sloping enough that one side of your tent is maybe flush to the ground, but the other side of your tent is 10 feet off the ground. And that is technically like a huge production. That's a huge structural elevated floor, engineered floor that has to go into place.
It's not only load bearing of people, it's load bearing
of material,
everything.
of every single thing, every rental, every fork, everything that comes in. So that's the first. The other is many people who are oceanside who have a property where tides can sometimes affect them.
Oh, okay.
So if you are on a beach property or if you are on a marsh property and you have any sort of staking in surrounding ground that moves with the tide, really shouldn't be there either.
Okay.
So again, sometimes you're
I
barging.
even
at
think
that
about
point.
with my I probably know more than most people about tinting, but I certainly am not an expert. But I even think about some friends of ours, and I think you were even there. The wind is blowing.
Oh, the wind.
It's just taking the tent. There are just some times you can't put a tent up.
There are some properties that when you, especially on the coasts, where if you are on a point, we actually have one together this year. When you're on a point, you have to be very strategic with the tent that you choose, because if you live on a point and you have wind coming at you from one direction and another direction fairly often, it really limits you on the style of tent that you can actually have in that location. And so that's another thing about tenting. It's not very much ever a one size fits all.
Yeah.
It's usually highly, highly custom. So
expensive.
Expensive, relatively expensive.
Yeah.
Well, it is, but it's one of those things where here's what everyone understands. Everyone understands if I can make a widget and I can make the widget over and over and over again, clearly the price should go down, right? If it's not going down, you're getting scammed. That is not how weddings are. And I see it a lot on Twitter or in Facebook groups where you see people go, weddings are a scam, the wedding tax, all this stuff. And I always say to them, I'm like, what other industry would be expected to make all their money in 6 months on 1 day a week? With maybe 10 potential clients that could actually fulfill their needs.
They never factor in the opportunity cost.
But also it's
highly fluctuating needs.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's everything is one-off. There's no widget. No. We're not making widgets, so we can't get the cost down. Now, something like wedding filmmaking, maybe you can make a widget. Some people might like a widget and they just want to buy the widget.
Yeah.
But there are some customers, like me and Jared know, that client we were talking about the other day, we talked about in the last episode. She said, I want this. She called about a $6,000 package. I'm listening to her, and I said to Jared, she doesn't want that. She wants this. We have to sell her a much more expensive package because she's not going to accept anything less than this. And that is how some clients are too in weddings. And it's then I know that's where the premium is. It's not on the actual video I'm giving them. It's on my time, and I'm the only one that they want there. Just like they want this one specific tent and this one specific part in their property that has a giant slope. And do you know who's going to fix it? A construction crew. And it's going to have 10 guys.
Yeah.
Probably more.
Or maybe more. So I think we should talk about how these things are made.
Yeah. That's kind of where I wanted to go too, is are there construction crews that are just doing weddings? Has our industry grown to that point where now there's people that are just I'm a wedding contractor, like literal building contractor.
Oh, that would be fun.
Yeah.
Not
If
yet.
you need an investor in that business,
Heck yeah.
Maybe.
And someone
Maybe
that could
that'll
just
be-
have a lumber
that'll
yard
be-
and
Company number 3.
yeah, I know.
No, so as of right now, the way that this works with tenting is that you will choose, and very specifically, you will choose a tent partner. And the tent partner that you choose is going to not only carry the tent style that you're looking for, but also is going to have the labor and an approach to weddings that aligns with your
probably
business.
permitting too, right? Will they handle the
Permitting, they'll handle permitting.
Okay, cool.
So definitely the tent company is going to have that team that is going to do the builds.
Yep.
And it typically is comprised, but it's similar to construction, right? So on the client side, we have our sales representative who is doing all the one-on-one with us, showing us all of the product that we would be able to get, whether it's a structure tent, a sailcloth tent, types of flooring. And then behind him or her is going to be all of the operations teams. So the operations teams are going to be pulling all of that equipment. They're going to be scheduling the equipment, how it's going to go up, how it's going to be installed, who's going to install it. And then on the day, you're going to have, or the week, I should say, since these take about a week to put up, you're going to have your foreman, and under your foreman, you're going to have your team that's
Cool.
going to put it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have they gotten so far? Are they like building bars at this point, or is that more event rental kind of companies? Like who's doing that part of construction?
So it depends on your tent company. Sure. I have found with our tent partners that they really like to specialize specifically in tenting and are not as excited. I shouldn't say excited, but they really need to keep their focus on that construction. Yep. So it's our rental companies and our custom fabricators who are making the bars.
Well, so let's pause here because I think a lot of people don't. This is when I think luxury wedding, obviously budget, obviously clientele, the things that like factor into my getting paid come into it. Mm-hmm. That being said, when you actually are at these events, you realize, like, to me, what a luxury wedding is about the team construction. Mm-hmm. So like, not to say there's always a designer, but there's often a designer. Mm-hmm. So here, I want to throw some people at you and be like, okay, let's look at one of our weddings. Mm-hmm. So we have this wedding and we got like, this is not a real wedding. Well, maybe we'll just make up a wedding. So we have a wedding where we have like Peak is there with a tent and some rentals. Mm-hmm. And then we have like Stone Blossom doing our flowers. Mm-hmm. And then we have Form there. Mm-hmm. Who's doing the bars?
You're talking all my favorite people.
I know.
And then you might have a designer too. Who knows? Like maybe there's like a separate person who's helping with design. Mm-hmm. And then we have Draper Lights, right?
Mm-hmm. Drape
Art. Sorry. And then we might have I don't know.
You're thinking about the caterer.
The catering, like maybe
Cater to Fair.
Maybe we have like Susan B. Anthony doing lights.
No, SB Lighting.
I just have to call that. I don't know why we called it.
SB Lighting.
One day we just started calling them.
I know
Susan
you
B.
did that one day, and I was like, her name is Suzanne.
I know. They do. Suzanne's there doing lights. The thing that people don't realize is the amount of moving parts, the amount of time, like I'll be there and then we'll be setting up and then the owner of the company walks in. Mm-hmm. How's this one going? Mm-hmm. That's how you know you had a big one. Mm-hmm. And like, is like, cause they're only at maybe 2 events on the weekend, checking them out. But it's like as these events, when people are like, back to my original thing where I said they don't know how much it costs or why it costs that much. There is sometimes 250 people associated with a wedding for 250 people. Mm-hmm. It is a 1-to-1. Mm-hmm.
Very often.
Very often.
In the luxury and ultra luxury worlds, that's pretty standard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And like, these are just people I threw off the top of my head. I could have given in every one of those vendor categories. If you don't know, like someone like Form is like, they are what is their considered custom
fabricator and stylist of rental.
They literally, I think, do they do furniture? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they do furniture, like rental house stuff, but then they build fixtures that they rent out. So it's like, this is a unique thing that only is in the event industry, pretty much. Mm-hmm. And it's like, they have to make all their money off the event industry. Mm-hmm. They're not renting them for people's houses for 1 year. You know, and it's like, these are expensive because every single thing, like the custom tints, is one-off.
How I mean, this probably goes down a different, avenue, but like, how recyclable is a lot of this? Like the flooring, obviously, they can use probably multiple times. When you're building like a bar, someone like Form, are they using that multiple times, or is it like sometimes one and done? Like what's that kind
So
of?
it really depends on the client who is ultimately having them custom fabricate it. So if the bar is something that is going to be able to be used multiple times because maybe it's on trend, or maybe it's something that pairs really beautifully with what we're seeing in weddings now or in events in general now, yes, they'll be able to use it again. If it's something incredibly specific, something that is, let's say there's a bar, like a wet bar in one of our clients' homes, and they want to replicate it and put it in the tent because they want a piece of their home in the tent, very likely that that's not going out again. So it's treated as a completely customized product, and usually highly expensive and very much, again, nuanced.
Right.
So
I wonder,
likely wouldn't.
like, what? There's obviously trends in the wedding industry, and like one thing goes out one year, and then the next year you see it like 12 times
Everywhere.
And then it won't see it at any of Keri's.
Yeah. That's true.
No, I mean, planners are like not just competitive that way, but like they will, like, if once a piece goes out and then they see it too much, they won't rent it anymore.
Well, the reason why I asked you about that was because how often do you do something really cool that's super customized? The fabricator is keeping it because they're like, we can resell this the next year, and then it's going out. So it's less about like creating new designs. It's just like you there's like point of the spears, right? Tip of the spear type people who are like doing the design, having the forethought, doing it. And then the next year, everyone's like, well, we have this bar. So it's like everyone now is like copying it. Not, because of the design is really cool.
Sure.
But also because it's an asset that's available. Like, do you think that's kind of like goes into like why we see these trends kind of like just happen over and over?
Yes, I actually would say that a majority of, it's really cool when you think about it, that very often a lot of us planners and designers, we work with people with incredible taste. So then we start looking outside of the rental world. We start looking at textiles and light fixtures from retail spaces, not necessarily the rental space, right? So a great example of this is when we work with Frost Productions, a lot of times we're looking at light fixtures that they don't have in their inventory. We're going to Visual Comfort, figuring out what those light fixtures are, and then bringing them in. By doing so, sometimes some of these rental companies build really robust inventories that are filled with products and items that tastemakers have really chosen.
Yeah, they're like curated by the best taste people.
Exactly. And some of our clients who have absolutely, I mean, I would say all of our clients have impeccable taste, but some of them that ultimately bring in items that are very reflective of their taste. Yeah, sometimes it's funny to see their products on other people's weddings years down the way, because it's like, oh, I remember when there's one specific chandelier that I brought in 2013 for a wedding. And whenever I see it up at a wedding, I'm always like, I remember those.
I think the same way about that round top bar.
Which one?
It's like a blue.
Oh, the blue.
Round bar I see everywhere now, ever since I saw that one wedding. And I'm going to say, maybe you were the first person to use it, but the first person I remember seeing use it. And now I see it everywhere. And I'll even see it at some of their events or private event, like all kinds of stuff. So it's like, it happens all the time. And I think it's like, back to why I think I always am beating the drum about like the need for tastemakers in any industry. It's so important. Like to have people who are authoritative and have expertise and pave the way.
Yeah.
And
agreed.
And like when you look at our industry, the luxury part of the industry is carrying almost the entire load of design for everyone. And it makes everyone money. Like if you don't have people who are like creating stuff that then a company like Oscar de la Renta makes a dress and then Behold It makes a dress that's a copy of an Oscar. Yep. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing because it elevates the bottom of the industry. And then, and then it forces the top of the industry to go, okay, that's been done. What can we do now?
Oh, it fuels so much creativity.
Yes,
That's what's so great about our industry. That's what I love so much about tenting too, is that because it is so, I'm going to use this word all the time, but it's so nuanced. Everything is so specific and unique to a certain property. You have to come up with creative solutions to fit within that property. You have to come up with items that will fit within a tent. So a great example of this is the corner bar. If you guys remember from the wedding that we did in 2023 in West Ennis, in the conservatory tent, we needed a corner bar because we were maxing out the space in the tent.
I can't believe you fit all those people in that.
We're going to do it again too. But we needed that corner bar. And so nobody had it. So we'll plug Form again. We called Form, Tony and Terrence, and I was like,
I mean, they're amazing.
They're amazing. No, there are other amazing custom
They're dressed so
fabricators.
cool too.
I know, they really are. I love them so much. But they made us a corner bar, and it was beautiful. It had mirrors, it had sconces, it had chairs, stools.
It did have sconces.
It had built-in shelving, arched shelving and they styled it with us. It was awesome. And that was a custom product. And now I see them out all the time. And I think about that though, and I'm like, you know what? That was a great solution for a tent that was being maxed out on its size and needed a smaller footprint for a bar. And it's a great, it's so cool to see how creative it gets and how the envelope gets pushed. We make bold decisions and we come up with really cool options. And then every year you have to build on that every year.
Yeah, a lot of creativity is fueled by problems and overcoming problems, right? Like that's a certain problem. You make it. Now it's just like, now you just mass produce it because you realize, oh, everyone has this problem. And like you solve it.
Actually a problem that people didn't have the courage to solve or the money. And it's like, if you have the money and you have the will, you could probably solve most problems. So I'm curious about a specific, why don't we talk of two questions I want to ask.
Okay.
One is about filmmaking, which I'll save. And one is about, let's talk about a specific event that we all worked.
Sure.
Some of the challenges, what we did. So which one should we do? Should we do Rosie and Joe? Rosie and Joe is a crazy.
It was an awesome property.
It was amazing, but there's a bunch of challenges about it.
Awesome client, awesome property, absolutely stunning. So if you've never been to the North Shore, we won't say the town. Let's not say the town. But if you haven't been to the North Shore of Massachusetts, it is mostly rocky cliff on the ocean. Most properties are set on these beautiful, expansive properties, but the terrain is cliff and granite, to be honest.
Cliff, granite, and like, what do they call them? Tide pools?
Yes.
It's literally
marshes and tide pools and coves. And that's what makes it so
I actually think the North Shore is one of the most beautiful places in America.
It is really stunning.
It is gorgeous. It is such a pain to get to, but it is, anyway, beautiful.
Pain to put tents on.
And you know what's so funny is this is a property that you might go to and think to yourself, I don't know, this might not work out. Because the property had an sunken lawn. It had two sunken lawns that were separated by rock walls and gates. And so what we really needed to do was essentially custom fit two structures in those spaces.
We have the video. If you could go to like Huxley Film, you can go and find Rosie and Joe's teaser. And you could see essentially there's like a beautiful house on the top of a hill. And then there's like almost like plateaus with rock walls and plateaus.
Terraces.
And then like, so there's like three of them. It's like a stairs, giant stairs for giants. Big enough to put a tent on, but barely.
And old, right? Like 75 years old, like 100 years old, roughly. Like,
very much generational home, absolutely stunning generational.
It was amazing.
With so much meaning to it, which is why we chose to go there and to have the wedding there. But yes, complex in the way that, not every property, in order to access the tent, are you going up and down multi sets of stairs. You'll see in that video when they walk into the tent, they're going down, I don't know, probably 25 steps. Stone steps down into they're like descending into the tent. They're not walking. And it's like, I remember shooting. You're just shooting. We're not like thinking. But when you really step back, you're like, wow,
why is this here? How
It's
did this get here?
absolutely. And you know what the biggest challenge of that really was is that, okay, so you're in this really beautiful spot. Now you're going to put a tent here.
Mm-hmm.
And this tent cannot take them out of the location because that's why they're having it there is the location is so unbelievably beautiful and special. So my job as a private estate and tented planner is I have to think about how do we highlight this home? How do we not take away from it? How do we make sure that it doesn't look corny, cheesy? And there's so much that goes into that, specifically choosing the tent style, but also choosing every fixture that goes with it and the draping and how guests approach it. I mean, I don't know if you guys even remember, but there were sconces that go on your house.
Well, and also
on
it
the
was
tent.
2 tents.
Yes, and there were 2 tents.
Yeah.
2 tents on the same little plateau. One of them a dance tent, and the other one was the reception tent. And what was it? How long did it take them to put 2 things I remember you telling me. One was how hard it was to get the construction crew onto the property.
Into the property.
The actual because they have this tiny road that is barely a road. There's nowhere to park, right on the water, and then they have like a swamp retention pond at the bottom of their hill.
Yeah, it's like a marsh.
Like a little
basically.
marsh. And then they have like this kind of like maybe a 20-foot wide walkway to get to the grass. And so like, it's like, how long did it take to put that thing up?
Well, so with a property like this, the thing you have to think about is that you have to get all that equipment onto the property and you have to do it safely. So we hand carried almost everything that we could in starting on the Saturday, so a week prior to the wedding. Then on Sunday came in any of the heavy lifting, and then we had to have a police officer on site managing the traffic because the town, the property is nestled in a very small, beautiful neighborhood community, and that road pretty much becomes a one-way once you put a truck on it. So
It's basically a one-way with a normal car.
with a normal car.
It's a small
It's a small property, and then there are steps, and then something you guys probably didn't even know, but was that when we were working, as we were going through multiple site visits, it just never occurred to us, and you just wouldn't know this, but until you get into it, that once we got on site and we started installing the tent, there was one corner stake that couldn't get into the ground because remember, we're built on granite.
Yep.
And we thought there was no granite there, and sure enough, wasn't there granite in the left final stake. And this is a stake that cannot not go in. Like this is like a turn, like a return. So it holds the tent up. And this was like a non-negotiable. This tent stake had to go in. So we ended up having to come up with a like weighted solution for the tent. We had to put in these weights, and we actually found another one after that. Same thing happened. So we ended up calling Stone Blossom, and basically Stone Blossom came up with a completely like landscaped idea to cover the weights so that guests didn't see the weight.
Was it the middle one?
There was a middle one.
Yeah.
And then there was one in the far that you wouldn't have seen because the stage hit it.
Yeah.
But
I
that
love
was
that
the
thing.
first one.
We were able to put all of our
I know
gear
you
over
probably
there.
put all your stuff.
It was like behind everything, but we were able to have
But
like
here's
a
the thing,
sniper
like-
position. It was awesome.
Like now you'll know
You're
it.
like, oh, thank you.
Oh, this is great. Keri, she thinks of everything.
I know. She gave us a little tripod stand with that.
Oh, it's so great.
Yeah.
You know, one thing I was going to also mention about this whole thing is this wedding was like, not only was like it complex in terms of like the installation of everything, when you really thought about the event and the movement of people, one of the things I think about with Keri's events and a lot of very good things, but I think it's a mark of a very good wedding planner. I say it sometimes to my guys privately. I'll be like, she's a great designer. She's not a great planner. About someone.
Okay.
Because if you see their work, like it looks beautiful, but when you go to the event, it's kind of a mess. The flow is off. There's all kinds of messed up stuff. And it's not just like my schedule. It's the guest movement. The experience of the guest moving into one space, having that wow moment, leaving the space, going to the next space, having the wow moment, going up to the next space. And not just being amazed, but having like, it almost is like part of the experience is moving to new environments. And every time they go, they're like, so that space, we had this beautiful lawn. So these people, I think they had 4 houses that they had?
They had
That they owned?
Yes, it was lots of family owned multiple
The
homes.
daughter had a home. They had an old home that they don't live in anymore.
Mhm.
And then
They had their
parents had a home that
Yep.
they actually live in, and then they had a groundskeeper's home.
Mhm.
So 5.
Yep.
So they owned a lot of property
Yeah.
that they used. So it was really probably like technically happening at 3 properties.
Mhm.
And so they had this beautiful lawn that looked out over the ocean, and that's where they got married. And that was kind of like pretty standard. They just,
It was beautiful. It was.
But I just mean like there wasn't like crazy stuff. They just had beautiful flowers.
Oh,
and beautiful
we really,
view and-
the view was so stunning that what we wanted to do is not take away from that.
Yeah.
And we really wanted the focus to be on the couple. So yeah,
But when you think about getting them over there,
that was tricky.
it was tricky. Like people had to be dropped off at a certain point. You have 2 or 3, 4 people helping them get there.
Sure.
You have some older folks who need even more help.
Yes.
Like getting them there and then getting them back and go up to the
Yes.
cocktail hour, which is in like basically like an Italian garden.
Yeah.
Yes, they had a secret
Like-
garden.
Like which
Yeah.
which was walking a total other place and then getting them to go down the steps into so this was like, and I see this not exactly that complex a lot, but it's pretty much always some version of that at every single luxury event. So my question with all that is to say, like, when you're planning out, maybe you could use this event specifically, but you're thinking through like how you're designing these things. There's obviously the construction side and that complexity, but then the complexity of like guest experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how much does one affect the other in your mind?
Oh my gosh, completely. So that's such a great question. And I think it's so important to talk about guest experience because I truly, truly believe that if your guests don't feel immersed in the day, it changes the dynamic of the day very much so that you can feel it. You can feel when we're at a wedding and the guests are in it. And that I think really contributes to the magic, if you will, of an event. Hospitality and experience is really important to me. You guys know that I grew up at a hotel, right? So for anybody who doesn't know, I live next door to my family's inn on Cape Cod. I was born and raised there.
It's called Chatham Bars Inn.
No, it's not.
I wish I'd be able to get some free rooms
No.
every once in a while.
No, it's in Falmouth. It's a quaint and charming inn, but we had a really expansive property. And so we had a lot of events there from family reunions to weddings to rehearsal dinners. And guest experience was always paramount because not only were we a venue, but we also were an inn and a hotel and a charming, like family-owned one at that. So showing people how much you care and you think about them and how much you value them staying with you was a big deal. And that translated into my understanding of weddings and events and how I approach them and my philosophy. So when it comes to the guest experience, it is completely, the way that I think about private estate and tented weddings is you have this incredible location, very exclusive. Not everyone can get married there. There are things to highlight about it. There are things that you want everyone to see. And there are aspects of it that are incredibly important to the client because they want you to feel what they feel about the property. So I would say we start with guest experience at a private home and we build completely around that. The tent is just a solution. The tent is only a solution. If we were in California, we wouldn't even have a tent.
So
wouldn't
that
need
brings
it.
up like we did, for instance, al fresco in Sea Island, Georgia, because that was a better solution.
Yes.
It wasn't like the tent is the sacred cow. It's like guest experience.
It was guest experience. It was also environmental, believe it or not. So that time of year, if you don't know this about Sea Island, Georgia, but the sea turtles there are incredibly important to them. And they needed to be protected during that time period because of the cycle of the babies being born. So we really didn't have the option for a tent. We were either indoors or we were outside al fresco. And so, and not only that, but I don't know if you even realize this, but the light fixtures were specifically put in and chosen because they were safe for sea turtles to be on. So we were not allowed to have bistro lights outside al fresco. We had to custom make these arches, these pergolas that we had over the lawn with a very specific light fixture that could handle one very specific light bulb that would be dim enough not to change the natural pattern of a sea
And then
turtle.
I blasted it with a 60X.
I know. I was like, oh my God, this is
The
definitely
sea turtle
illegal.
walks by, he's like, "Ah!"
Definitely illegal.
Turtles.
But
All these sea turtles are just flipping over dead.
even for the
Filmmakers ruin everything.
we didn't even have a normal lighting company. We had a landscaping, like a home landscaping lighting company that came in and did that and actually affixed lights to trees.
Wow.
So, but either way, like when you think about the guest experience that we're trying to create, it's like you're on the beach.
That, yes.
You should feel like you're on the beach.
You should
and
feel
it's
like you're there.
You should feel like you're at this person's house, so you should see their house.
Yep.
So you should see the things that were the memories, and like what they should. You might, like, for instance, like position the tent so that they can see the swing.
Correct. Exactly. Exactly right. We might put the swing in the tent.
Yeah.
Like that's what we did in West Ennis. There were these beautiful trees that they had planted. Mom really didn't want to pick those trees back out for the dancing tent. So we just built the tent around the trees. Meanwhile, people are bringing in trees for like hundreds of thousands like dollars for production. Not hundreds of thousands, but probably like a few $1,000s just to get your trees into this tent. Meanwhile, we had them. We just built around them.
Yeah. So like guest experience, like
It's
moving
everything.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tie it into filmmaking because when I think about guest experience, the way I, as a filmmaker, communicate guest experience is typically through reactions, like how people react. If you can get that, it's nice. It doesn't always happen, but movement,
Yes.
like having a person moving into a space
Yep.
and
Transition.
showing
We call it,
transitions.
transition hinge moments.
Like what is like so if you're showing like a design, you could take the perspective of a guest when you go into a tent, which is that walk in. The push in, the tilt push. You walk in a tent, you look at the top, then you look down, you look up, whatever it is, trying to imitate that. Or you just follow people or show them moving from place to place to place. And one of the things I know I'm going to get if I do an Always Yours / Keri Ketterer Walter event is I'm going to get shots of people transitioning.
Yes.
From thing to thing to thing. So I know my film is going to be a good, very coherent story.
Yes.
Because I know remember when we went to this? Remember when we went to that? That's how people remember days. Remember that one time we went over here? Remember that one time we went over there? They're not thinking, like, remember that time I sat there for 2 hours?
I know. Even when there's a church ceremony and you're sometimes waiting, it doesn't happen often with tented, but if it happens at a venue or something like that, you have to have something for the guest to experience. Otherwise, if you're in Boston, they're going out to every bar.
Were you at WED when Natalie and then
I was not at WED. I missed
There was a
WED.
speaker there, and I can't remember his name. I think he does weddings in the Hamptons. He's a guy, and I don't know if it was his wife or whatever. They were talking, and it sucks because I wish I remembered it because I think about what they said all the time.
About transition?
Yes.
Yeah.
They said, whenever someone transitions, there should be something for them to interact with.
Yes. A
Even-
surprise and delight is
Yes.
incredibly important.
Like, and it doesn't have to be expensive. He's like, they could walk in and it could just be apples. Just something so that when they walk in, they not only are they having something to do, not be bored, and having something that's interesting and saying wow, but they're also having like a mental click in their mind, like, now I'm onto something new.
Yes.
Oh, so like you want them to dance? Have someone hand them something when they walk in the dance floor. Like so many times I see people like they flip a space. Like you didn't change the lights, you didn't do anything to tell them to change their actions. So people are still talking at their seats. They're still, and you see this all the time. Really good event design is about telegraphing the experiences you want people to have. And let them do what they want, but also you're trying to set a mood for your couple.
It goes back to immersion. It's every single part of the event. That's why I usually say the tent is really a solution. So when we're at a private home or we're any location where we need a tent or a structure of any kind, that's just to make it possible for us to have this event. A lot of times it's weather dependent or it's about lighting or whatever it is. At the end of the day, it's more important that the guest experience has been built around being a true experience, being an extraordinary one, and also being immersive. So we want guests to be, when they're transitioning, we want them to be surprised and delighted by what they're going to next. And sometimes we're also kind of dangling something over here to stop them from realizing that maybe there's a bottleneck that we just can't avoid. You know, maybe there's one way into the tent and one way out, but we want them to be really, really happy while they're experiencing that bottleneck. So maybe it is something like there's something interactive going on, or maybe they're being served some really beautiful cocktails, or maybe they're getting a really beautiful small plate as they're entering the tent. Or maybe it's servers or greeters who are lined up with beautiful silver trays, holding everyone's escort card, and guests are picking it up as they walk into the tent.
Yeah, remember that even like on the fly. Like, remember you always talk about that thing at that Lindsay Landman event with the.
Oh yeah, you know, did an event last year, a year before. One of the coolest things that I think we get to do is, you know, an event that is a live event, right? It's like you're experiencing it. Things just kind of like pop up, sometimes that you're not expecting. And
Not always good.
Good hospitality is like, how do you react to that thing that wasn't expected? Like, hey, it's raining. Now, guess what? Everyone who's a server is now holding the umbrellas. And, you know, at Nemacolin, at Engage this last year, it was piss pouring out of nowhere. Like, they had their entire staff, people that are, you know, bellmen and all these people wearing these cool uniforms. They're all wearing they're all holding Nemacolin branded umbrellas, holding it over everyone as they're walking to transportation, kind of thing. That's just something that a good designer, a good planner, like comes up with. Like, hey, we're going to create this experience, this tunnel of people, and they're all going to have a smile on their face. And it feels like you're being hugged as you're walking through. Thank you. Everyone's in a good mood, you know, like it's, and same thing happened at that Lindsay event where it's like, hey, everyone's holding umbrellas for the guests that are walking in.
It's not supposed to be raining.
Not supposed to be raining.
It's bad that it's raining.
But you turn it into a positive. That's a multiplier.
So instead of people arriving on a shuttle that's dropping them off 50 feet away from the tent, walking across a muddy lawn, which maybe they still have to do, but walking across a muddy lawn, getting soaking wet, ruining their hair. Instead, they walk in, they see a line of amazing people waiting on them hand and foot. Not only are they look at that, their anxiety goes down. They go, oh my gosh, I'm taking care of it.
They're not looking at their muddy shoes. Instead, it's smoke and mirrors. It's like, I'm distracted by this.
They're walking, and then but this was just like a thing that Lindsay on the fly is like, we're all doing this now.
Yeah.
We're all focusing on this. This is now what we're doing. And it's like, these experiences of creating these wow moments out of walking from one place to the other. It's crazy. Like, we don't think about that, but I feel like the best planners,
you remember
that's what they do.
Like, you remembered that. That was a not fun experience, right? It's pouring rain out. You're dressed very nicely. You're going to this event. And it is like, you know, there is something to be said about your comfort too. You're like, oh God, I'm going to get wet now.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, there's this tunnel of people holding umbrellas, and you're like, wow, they care, and you remember it.
Well, and to transition this to like the filmmaker side, I think it's important for filmmakers to notice those things.
Yes.
How often do it's you know, you just have to be in tune with what the day, you know, what's unfolding in the day. Finding those moments that are happening. I always say to our you know, couples and people I'm on the phone with, it's like, we're trying to be a good listener with our camera lenses, like listening to the day. That's what the day is telling you. Hey, this is happening. This is really cool. This unique. Tells a story, right? How do you transition, or how do you capture those moments or those transitions? But to kind of keep on the theme with talking about filmmakers, and maybe we're talking about it a little bit already, but what are some things that you like to see a filmmaker capture, not just tented events, but it could include the tents. Like, what are some like must-have shots?
Maybe we keep it to design. Like, how do you want filmmakers to cover? Like, what are some things about design that you like when a filmmaker does it?
Yeah.
Well, specifically in regards to tents, I think I really love, I love the drone footage of a tent. Because I feel like it gives the big picture, right? It shows you not only the property, but it shows you guests interacting with the event, and it shows you a really big, beautiful kind of bird's eye view of the tent itself. So I always love those. It shows you where we're working, and it shows you the feelings of everything. And I really love when it comes to design. I do really love, and you guys do this so well. Again, with the drone, I love when you guys put the drone up in the tent. In the tent, not outside of the tent, but in the tent, because I do think
very safely.
Yeah, very
You
safely.
must be very safe.
Be careful with the open flame below as well.
Yes. But I love that because I think when you are at guest eye level, that's one experience. But I think also getting to see how it all plays together, it's a different version of the room clear. It's a different version of that ground level shot. You're getting all the levels and the textures and all the rentals we chose. And that's something that I really enjoy. And I obviously love when you guys capture.
I mean, not to say I'm the only person I've ever seen do it or the first person I've ever seen do it. I don't really know. But the reason I started doing it is because whenever I would look at the designers' design plans, they're all bird's eye. And I said, so this is how they designed it.
Yeah.
They didn't design, like, I think back on bird's eye of like flat lay, and also flat lays are a thing. And I'm like, well, why don't we do flat lays of design? Like of that kind of stuff. So that's why I was like, this is how this is actually designed. It's not designed at eye level. It's designed as a grid.
Yeah. But to your point, even though we did design it from bird's eye, a lot of times that's because it gives us the big picture and the client needs the big picture. But I also love when filmmakers capture guests experiencing design. So guests at those corner bars that we've designed, guests getting a drink from a very specific collection of, so let's say we picked out very specific trays for this particular wedding and very specific glassware. Guests interacting with these design elements is really, it's a big part of what I love about filmmaking when it comes to a tented wedding, because there's been so much thought and effort that has gone into every single design choice we've made. And it's all about guest experience. So seeing them experience design is really something that I love in the films.
I would agree. And I think anywhere where you could show a guest using something in a way that's not unflattering.
Correct.
Is always better than just like, I think you elevated your filmmaking when you have become strategic enough and have enough forethought to identify when something is going to be used when it's not destroyed. So you need to shoot it at one specific moment.
Yes.
Right? When it's
new.
A virgin table sitting there,
yes.
beautiful, and the very first drink.
The very first drink, or like the food is placed right down on that place setting.
Like catching those moments of people interacting with design.
The moment I love capturing every time is the first person who walks in and puts their purse.
Yeah, well, that's my favorite.
That's my favorite too, for sure. We definitely we need just a little bit of time before we put down the purses. So here's
my question. How much? Why do they have to put the butter out so early?
Because it's usually frozen. It's usually frozen.
They're like, butter, stack.
Butter.
Champagne can wait.
And the salt and pepper shakers.
Yeah.
Get
And
the
the
butter.
ice. And the ice.
It's so funny to me too. It'll be like this, especially at venues in Boston. You'll go, hey, can we have 5 minutes? We're just shooting this. Oh yeah, sure, no problem. 5 seconds later.
Or no. The servers.
And then you say to the server, hey,
the server will come out with their phone, and the server's taking photos. You're like, dude, come on.
And then you say that one guy, and then he walks. He's oh sorry, and he walks out, and then
we love our
totally
servers.
different person walks out.
I know.
And I'm like, can you guys just like have a quick team talk?
I know.
Cry.
That's usually what we do. Is we usually ask the caterers. That's one of my favorite little tips. Is we ask the caterers when we do room clear. Go ahead and have your 10-minute morning meeting. Here we go. Here's in charge. Who's in charge of what? Who's doing what table? Usually they talk about that earlier in the day, but it's nice to go over it again once all staff is there. And so that's what we tell them to do during that time. Another hack that I really, really love, especially when it comes to our tented weddings in our structures that are clear tops, is not putting the water glass on the table, because a lot of times they sweat and the ice melts. So now what we're doing is we're having the water glass stay in their racks. They're filling the water glasses in the racks, and then after room clear, they're coming in and putting the waters
I
down.
thought you'd be installing like fountains in everyone's table. So.
They can, you know what would be awesome is that during room clear, that's when they fill the water glasses.
They always
There
do
you
that.
go. No. I mean,
Oh, in your actual situation.
in my actual
right.
situation.
Yes,
Yep.
yes. In real life, what they do is I've literally had servers be like, "What am I supposed to do with the water then?" And I'm like, "Are you?"
They're very much under stress because they do also. We usually are
Me
doing
too.
that. I know.
You want to see Jared rage? That's what I'm like.
I don't think-
Like Jay will be
Never
like
seen that.
in the shot coming. I think the only time I've ever yelled at Jay is when he's gotten in my shot during room clear and candles are melting really
quick.
fast.
So we're talking about room clear here. Do you guys? You all probably know this, but I don't know if you know it. So I don't want to
Passionate,
assume.
very passionate about this.
When you think about room clears, we all realize that most weddings don't do a room clear.
I was actually going to say that the majority of weddings, like we're talking about something that could be very foreign
Yes.
to people.
Yeah.
right
So
now.
what we're
Very
talking about
granular.
is typically at these weddings, the planner will typically tell usually it's written down when we are supposed to shoot design. This is not because design is more important than the couple. No, we all know it's not. We all understand the people are the most important thing. The reason why we do it and why it has to happen is because the servers have a job to do. And they need to know when they can do that job. So you have 250 people working at this event. Everyone has to have a spot to do their job. And so if we don't set the room clear, then they don't know when to set their meeting, and then we don't know. But I will say this, if you are watching these luxury wedding films and seeing all these beautiful detail shots and thinking that they spent an hour, no, we spent 10 minutes every time.
Yeah.
That's actually true. It is 10 minutes.
Yep.
It doesn't matter how much time you give. It's always just 10
I will
minutes.
get 3 filmmakers in there and 2 photographers and a drone all staying out of each other's way, and we'll all go, let's all do the wides. And we all go to one side of the tent.
Yes.
And we all go, now we're going to do tights.
Yeah.
And everyone goes to
A
tights.
lot of times it looks like special forces as we're like
It's
making
so
our way
impressive.
through
People are
the
just
tent, like a wave.
Yeah. It is like the only time and it honestly creates so much goodwill between the
does.
teams.
Yeah, yeah.
Everyone involved. Like catering team is like when I see a catering team that's cool with that, I'm like, these guys are the best. The planner helped me out.
Yeah.
The photographer's on my team. You typically like the lighting guys are on your team. Like, I don't know, man. When people are like, I don't want to do luxury weddings, I'm like, I don't know. You're going to be working the wrong weddings.
We should talk about that for a second too, because the importance of the most stellar team on a tented wedding at a private home is probably one of the most important elements of a wedding. Because if you all cannot work together in a very creative, respectful way, it doesn't work.
It should be fun too.
It needs to be fun.
Yep.
But I truly believe that the synergy that you as vendors have with each other, you know, the extra step that you guys take to talk to the photographer ahead of time to express, you know, how, if you haven't worked together before, how you're shooting, or if you have worked together and you are trying to convey, there's a story to tell here, and here's how we're thinking we're going to capture it. How do you feel about that? You know, and are we going to work together on drone footage? I think that's really, really important. And you can see it. I mean, our couples wouldn't see it, but as planners, we can see the difference between a vendor team that has worked really seamlessly together and vendor teams that have not,
Well, it's
by
like
just looking at the photos.
Christina
and video.
Adams is
Right,
not my
right.
best friend or something. I text her once a year, maybe. And I worked with her one time.
Mhm.
But great experience. And I knew it the second we got on the phone.
Mhm.
I was like, oh, this is going to be easy. Because I threw one idea out and she was like, she didn't take my idea and go, that's your thing. I have my thing too. That's not the way to think about it.
Mhm.
She was like, what if we did this and this too?
Mhm.
And it was like, and then the idea was made better
Mhm.
because everyone was on the same. It's like, I don't understand. Like, I only see that at luxury weddings. I never, like, I know if I'm shooting, like, and this is no shade because it's not about the couple. The couples are wonderful at every level of wedding. It's factually. The thing that can suck is the vendors.
Yeah, I think it really just comes down to, you know, if there is a planner, and obviously the weddings that we're talking about, there is a planner.
Yes.
When
Can you imagine a person without a planner trying to do this stuff?
not the weddings that we're talking about right now. I honestly, like, consider it to be so daunting for any client walking.
Some
any
planners can't even do it if you don't have the expertise.
It's very true. I mean, most of our couples, when they first walk in, are like, we have no idea how this is going to happen, but this is what we'd like to have happen, and we'd love you to do it. But really, at the end of the day, one of the key things that is a major part of what makes up our job as planners is figuring out matchmaking, figuring out who is going to be the perfect vendor for every single category on our list of vendors that we have. You know, we need to figure out every single vendor who is not only going to be offering the perfect aesthetic, personality, and price point for our clients, but also is going to have synergy with their vendor partners that they're working with. That is so crucial. And I'm telling you, when I look at galleries, I can always tell if there was one vendor that just wasn't working with everybody else.
Oh, wait, it's never me.
It's not you. It's not you. But I mean that from the perspective in the films or in the, you know, in the galleries, you can pinpoint which one was not communicating effectively because you can see something sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yes, for sure. And so any other tips you want to give filmmakers to cover design better?
In tent specifically, I think it's really important, and this might be getting very technical, but if you're going to a tent that is a clear top and you're going to a tent that is a sailcloth and you're in the thick of summer, I mean, there's different equipment that you're using. There's different lenses that you're using to capture certain tents. And there are certain ways that you're going to be capturing tents differently. I think it's really important that when you go into a tented wedding, you understand the design and the elements that are all incorporated into that, especially at a private home. Tents aside, if you go to a private home, there is probably quite a bit of legacy, generational tradition elements to the home that are important. I always use this example, but there's a mirror in one of my clients' homes that every single one of the women in the family has had a picture taken in, like fixing their hair or fixing their dress before they go out to the ceremony. It is imperative that everyone gets that image or footage of that moment because that is a part of their legacy. That's a part of
How much do you think, I mean, with that specifically, but I guess maybe it could be generally, does the shot need to look exactly the same?
It doesn't need to look exactly the same. I actually think it's really beautiful when it doesn't because it changes with time and it changes with perspective. It just needs to fit the person who's in the mirror. You know, it needs to fit. So let's say it's Mildred.
You got to give them that mirror moment.
You have to give them that mirror moment, but maybe, you know, that client, maybe their mother's picture of them in that mirror, footage of them in that mirror is more dramatic, but maybe the daughter is a little shyer. So maybe it's just her putting lipstick on.
Maybe she's
not
a chain
like
smoker,
fixing
so
her
she's
veil.
like,
No. But maybe she's just putting lipstick on instead of fluffing her big veil and like the veil is cathedral going all the way to like the kitchen basically. You know, it's thinking about those moments that contribute. It's not just design, but those moments that contribute to the overall design as well that are really important. Another thing that I will say, if you're working with a planner like myself who takes a lot of pride in the design and the production and spends a lot of time figuring out how to make sure that things look clean and crisp, it would definitely behoove you not to capture things that are ugly. So when I think about it,
you would be surprised, but would it be surprised?
Well, I think about it from this perspective. So once in a while we are unable to get vehicles out of a shot. I'm using this one as an example. I know Jason and I have talked about this before, but let's say that there's a catering truck and it has to be in this particular spot outside of the tent because it's going to make the guest experience better. The food will get to guests better if the truck is there. Please, please, please do not shoot the bride and groom from an angle where all you see out the back side of the tent is the truck.
White cape.
But don't put the bride and groom in front of the truck.
No,
Wedding planner.
we wouldn't.
You wouldn't. And you know, also don't do wedding planner. Because I know you know, wedding planners will be listening to you. I'll give a wedding planner one tip.
Okay.
Which you don't do.
Okay.
do not put giant florals directly in front of the bride and groom.
Yes.
For God's sake.
Or if you're going to do that, then have the bride and groom come to the opposite side. Remember we did that for Lexi and Henry?
Yep.
Because it didn't even matter that the florals weren't right in front of them. It was just the fact that the shadowing, the lighting in that space, they really just needed to come to the other side of the table.
The couple needs to see the people giving toasts.
Exactly.
And
you
I
the
need to
reaction.
see them because they're going to be mad at me if I don't.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it just makes such a big difference. And I always, this is when I say good designers, bad planners, is like, they go, that looks beautiful. Swoop. And I agree. It looks beautiful when no one is in it, but it is unfunctional.
Yes.
And I think like what I'll always say about horror designs and a lot of good planners is like when we're talking about guest experience, we could also use that interchangeably with functional.
Yes. Form and function have to meet.
And it's like, it has to function with, but the function of a wedding is experiencing a wedding. So seeing what's happening, easily getting your food and drink, like as much as we want it to be beautiful, you don't want to be like, oh, it looks so beautiful, but you have to climb a mountain to get a glass of champagne.
Well, here's a great example of design that I personally don't think makes sense. Some people will probably fight me on this, but
Let's fight.
so banquettes at weddings.
I hate banquets.
So,
They look beautiful.
essentially sofas or seating, booth seating at weddings. Okay, there shouldn't be a time where a guest cannot turn around and see the toasts because they're sitting at a banquet and they are facing, their back is facing the guest, because in a banquet seat, they can't turn around. It's just they're sitting there and they're facing the exit and just listening.
Yeah, think about when you were a kid and your parents were talking behind you on the couch. Turn around on the couch.
Correct.
You want guests to have to do that?
You don't want guests to have to do that. And if it's summertime and they have to do that, the person in the middle of that banquet is going to be sweating.
Yeah.
Because they can't move.
People are already kind of uncomfortable wearing fancy clothes already.
Yes.
So it's
They could
like,
be a 70-year-old person.
Also, make sure that the banquet is dining height. Don't put them on a couch that's basically on the floor.
Yes.
So that
I've seen that.
can you see Jared sitting at a banquet with his knees
I would be
up to
eating
his
my
Because
knees.
you're not asking everyone's height before you do the seating chart.
I know, right? That's going to be the next thing.
Yeah.
How tall are you and how high or how tall is your torso?
You might have to say that. But regardless, no, it's a great advice. But it's like, I think when you're to the original question about shooting, I would always tell filmmakers everything about connection at weddings.
Yes.
So if I see a tent, we'll talk about Rosie and Joe. There were some things we didn't want to show in the drone, even though
The
it is
restroom trailer.
yeah,
Because there was only one place for the restroom trailer.
and I think we couldn't totally avoid it, but downplay it.
We did for the most part.
Yeah, but I have to show, ideally, ocean, because that's important to the story.
Yes.
Multiple houses,
Yes.
if possible,
Yes.
and the tent.
Correct.
And so it's the connection between all those spaces. Because not only will you see they live here, here, and here, you're going to say they walked here, here, and here. They can pull that drone footage up to their children and say, we were here, then we walked here, and then we walked here, and then we walked back down here. You have a design, right? It's a floral design in the ceiling. So it's kind of got a directionality to it. And then there's maybe a design on the bottom. That's kind of and it's almost like when you look at it, it's like an hourglass.
Yes.
But they're two separate things. So this is how a lot of filmmakers do. But you really should be straight. This design talks to this design. So you have to show how your designs talk. And ideally how they talk to each other, but also how they talk to guests' movement and how they interact and use the space. That is what makes if you want a planner to keep referring you, allow them to take your footage when they're pitching people or showing people and say, it's gonna be like this. And when they see the footage and they show people using it, the guest goes, that looks like a great time. Not oh yeah, that's a cool flower on the ceiling, but it's well, no, there was over a bar. So you got to show the bar too. And a lot of times, the corner thing you mentioned, what a lot of people would do is they take that corner bar and they go close to the bar. And I'm like, you can't see that it's in the corner of the tent. You have to
exactly.
back up and show that it's how it was integrated into the space. And so it's like the connectivity of design is so important, and so many filmmakers don't tell that story.
Yeah. So I have a question, Keri, because when we film your weddings, I feel like in a certain aspect, there's a lot going on. So that's always kind of like a challenge to make sure we're getting everything. But in a lot of ways, it's easier shooting your weddings because, because they're beautiful, obviously. But there's a certain symmetry to like your design, and in a perfectionism probably that lines up angles in a way that's just satisfying to me as like an image maker. And I even like I shoot a lot of weddings of like a ceremony space. We're talking about the ceremony space earlier, where it's like, you know, the seats are all lined up. Grounds are really uneven here in New England, but still the chairs and everything there is like, you know, we're shooting top down from drone. Everything's super symmetrical. Like, why is it symmetrical for you? What is that symmetry for your designs that I don't see in other designs? I'll shoot some chairs sometimes at a ceremony and the chairs are all crooked. They're all different. Like, do you have like a person?
Yes.
How does that work?
Oh, well, so to answer your question, Jared, I'll start with that and then I'll tell Jay's story. But I think that symmetry, there's so much psychology behind design, but symmetry is so pleasing to the eye. And for a lot of our clients, when they come to us for design, you're actually hitting on something that they also notice, is that there's a lot of symmetry, you know, repeating pattern. It's really comforting. And so it does set off a feeling inside of you.
Endorphin little.
Yes, you get like a little kick from seeing something that's so visually interesting and so beautifully symmetrical. And that's important to us because it also shows a level of care. We didn't just throw those chairs out. We made sure that those chairs were measured with string, you know, or when we go.
Is that what it is? It's like,
string.
Okay.
It's string that lines them up.
A little plumb line.
A little. And, or when you have a table setting, you know, poor Elise, although she loves it, Elise spends on our team, she spends hours. There's actually a time-lapse video of her at Rosie and Joe's just going like this back and forth, like fixing the place settings. Because it shows the level of care and quality control that's gone into the place settings. This might sound neurotic, but if you come into the tent and everything is perfectly lined up, like the glasses, if you use string to set the glasses, they all line up perfectly. That, you know how you like white space, for example?
Yep.
It's the same idea. By lining the glasses up perfectly, by lining up the plates and the forks and the knives all so perfectly, you create that white space. So then every individual element can actually shine for what it is. And when you think about how long that client and that couple has spent choosing things, we have a client right now who's a fashion designer. Everything is important to her because it's a part of her. That design element is a part of her. So when everything is so perfectly symmetrical and lined up and you create that white space, you can understand and comprehend every single piece. And that is so visually appealing.
Yeah.
And it really makes a design. Yeah, so we set expectations about the land.
Okay.
If we are on a piece of land that's beautiful and flat, we're not really talking about what it means for the chairs. If we are in a location that is very much sloping, or if it, you know, is kind of unique, we will speak to the clients directly about what that means and what the expectation should be about how the ceremony is going to look.
You say like, who could fall?
Right.
Who at this wedding can fall?
Who's going to trip? And then a lot of times, one of the things that we do when
you actually ask that question, who's going to trip?
No, I usually ask, you know, is there anything that we can do? If there's divots, I'm usually asking, is there anything we can do with landscaping to avoid this? If not, we're putting flowers on it.
Yep.
But we have been in scenarios before where we have designed a ceremony to be very unique in terms of the seating because it's made the most sense for the lawn, and it might not be a traditional amphitheater or a traditional straight back and forth, you know, chairs from beginning to back of the aisle, but it works for that property. That's what I love about private homes so much, is that you walk in and you're working with what you're working with.
Yeah.
And you have to come up with all of these creative solutions, but that's what makes them all so unique and
Right.
so special.
Oh yeah, David Lynch always talked about like when he was a filmmaker in the
Twin
60s
Peaks?
and 70s. Well, I mean, it took him 7 years to make Eraserhead.
Are you a Twin Peaks fan? Oh, no
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, I love Twin Peaks. But
So-
David Lynch always says like
That soundtrack or
Yeah.
the theme song?
Yeah.
Love the theme
Oh my
song.
God.
he says like
David-
the necessity, the limitations are what is the like actually genesis of creativity.
Exactly.
You
Yes.
need limitations to force you to be.
That's the constant theme I hear from you. It's just like,
Do you guys know that there's a quote that the antidote to anxiety is creativity?
Yes, I
Hmm.
think so.
So
makes
dissonance
sense.
or problems, the antidote or the solution is creativity.
Yes,
Yeah,
if I have a problem, I know that I need to go sit with the problem until I feel like I understand. I don't even solve the problem necessarily.
Correct.
I just understand the problem. And once you understand it, then you can say like in the case of weddings, like you can say we can't do this, we can do this. And
Exactly.
It's not, but the worst is when you don't know what you can do.
Exactly. And I do think that understanding how creativity is an opportunity is what I think if everybody on your team, or at least those crucial vendors, understand that, you can do some really incredible things on an event that, honestly have never been seen before. And to your point earlier, when you do something that's never been seen before, or you pioneer things through creativity, you set the tone for what you do in the future and even for what the industry is doing as a whole.
Well, and you're kind of talking about creativity a lot, but you're not edgy.
No,
And I think a lot of people say like, oh, creativity, they mean weird.
No.
And
it can be.
it can be
Mhm,
weird.
sure,
It's
sure.
nothing wrong with weird. Like
Mhm.
I call them like renegade wedding filmmakers. Like you want to do that thing that no one really wants, but you really want to do it. I think that's great.
And you align with the people who
Yeah,
want
you
that.
figure that out, you find that out. But I will say for everyone, all of us who are not doing that, but are just trying, you still need to be creative.
Mhm.
And what creative means usually is about your approach to problems to me.
Mhm.
It's not necessarily how much you choose to spin your camera or something like that.
this is my question for you, Keri, is obviously we're in New England,
Mhm.
which we always make fun of, like, what shade of white would you like for your linens here in New England?
Which Shivari chair color do
Yeah,
you
yeah,
like?
yeah. How do you stay creative in such a traditional place? Because we're doing most of our weddings probably in New England. You do a little bit more everywhere else, but
Old money, tradition.
old
there's a
money,
lot of
tradition.
things.
I love this question.
How do you stay creative in such a what some might consider a bland region of the
We'll
country?
say less open to ideas.
Yeah.
I love this question because I think it's a challenge here. And I think like we talked about earlier, there are so many opportunities when there's a challenge to be creative. So one of the things that I really love to do, when it comes to design, I always try to say, how can we do this, but in an outside the box way? So the exercise that I always do is, how can we do a table with white linen, but it can't be a table with white linen? How else could we do this? Do we make a custom table that's white and get the same effect? Do we think about the table, like, is it that the table is white or the linen is white, or is it white with tons of pops of color on it as well? That's a very simple example.
Hydrangeas, I think, are the ever-present.
The ever-present.
thing.
But what variety of hydrangea can we
Yes.
get that's completely different than what we've been seeing? We just did a wedding last year that was entirely based around limelight and antique hydrangea, which are not the two hydrangea that people think of. They think of the blue and the white, or like the periwinkle. These have an antique tone to them.
Like the
The green, and then like the kind of dusty, like burgundy around
Yes,
the edges. And, that's hydrangea, but that's hydrangea in the fall.
who was doing those marigold like balls? Like I forget, as a florist, and she was taking these boring florals, these cheap florals, and she would go like, because a big thing is like bunching.
Yes.
Anytime you can take any design and make bunches of it,
Yes.
like you could take baby's breath.
Mhm.
If you put enough of it, it'll actually be more impressive.
Correct.
And so it's like there's all kinds of fun ways that you can take anything that you're used to doing and transform it.
Well, that also goes back to Jared's point about symmetry. If you take one flower and you repeat it over and over and over again, that visual is really satisfying to the eye. So yes, you can take a marigold, for example, that's a relatively cheap floral, inexpensive, do a lot of it and make a really impressive statement. So that's another way to do it. I think another thing that I really like to do when it comes to design, and this is a trick that I'll share. I probably shouldn't share this one, but I always call our vendors, all of our rental vendors, all of our floral vendors, and the first thing I say to them is, what's something you really want to do this year? Like, what's something you have not done this year that you really, really want to do? What is a product that you really want to bring in that you haven't brought in because you just don't have the right client for it? Show it to me. Show me what it is, because it's very often that those products are something, or that look or whatever it is something that our clients would be really excited about if they can just be given the visual, if they can just be shown how it's
even
going
if
to
you
look.
pitch people on like no one else has this. For some people, that is enough.
Some people love that.
Like some people love just having a unique, and like obviously you're supposed to know your couples and know what they're like, but you can do it in filmmaking too. Like you can say to them like, hey, no one has done this, but would be fun to do, and let them decide.
How much is AI and something like Midjourney playing a role in design?
I've been using it.
Yeah?
I love using it. I use it mostly for tablescapes and tenting, specifically when we have a couple who maybe has a look that they're trying to achieve, but maybe can't articulate to us what exactly it is. It could just be, that the couple needs to see all of these collection of items together to understand the look that we're trying to go for. And if they can just see a representation of it, then very often we can take it further. So AI has really, some people don't love it. In terms of design as a planner, if you know how to use it, I've really loved using it just to convey what something could look like if you just gave it a chance. And that goes a long way. Somebody who is maybe timid or scared of being showy, but can be shown through AI how beautiful it can look and how refined it can still be, is much more willing and able to take it a step further and be a little bit bolder.
Yeah, I mean, it's about comfort, right? At the end of the day.
So the words always sound a little bit more intimidating, probably. Like, I want this thing to be really big.
You're relying on someone, you're relying on someone thinking the exact same thought as you. Well, and that is just so infrequent.
It's like when they say that they want something to look effortless. If you want something to look effortless, more often than not, there has been so much effort and so much meticulousness.
Yeah, because like say you're like, oh, I put no effort into this. You said effortless. They wouldn't be.
They would not like it at all. I mean, white linen is one of the hardest linens to pick. You know how many shades of white there are? Warms versus cools. I mean, when you think about it, when we talk about white space, again, if you have a really simple design, you have to spend the time to meticulously set it up so that you can appreciate how truly effortless it is.
Yeah. So, Jared, you want to do one last? Or are we going to close up shop today?
I have a consultation in a few minutes, so I think we should wrap it up. I wish we could keep on talking, Keri, because this is great.
I love it.
Yeah, well, I love
chatting with you guys.
If you are listening to this episode, where can people find your work, Keri?
So you can find us on social, on Instagram at Always Yours Events, or you can find us at Keri Ketterer Walter Co.
Yeah, give them a follow. Give them a follow.
Yeah,
right now.
A newer account. Thank you so much for coming on. Like
Thank you.
I love just talking about the wedding industry, and it's so good. If you're hearing this and you're like, I don't care about luxury weddings, yeah, that's cool, but it's still interesting.
It is
still interesting to like know how stuff works, and so we just want to give you kind of insight into weddings, because some of you guys might be hearing this stuff and being like, oh, I'm so bored of my weddings. I want to do something more exciting. The reason I like bigger weddings is because they're hard. And I want to do things that are challenging, and I want to feel like my skills are maximally used. And I will say, like, when I work with Keri, I feel respected, but I also feel like it is challenging and it forces me to be my best. And because I have to match her level.
Yeah.
Like you have to match the level of the people you're partnering with. You can't be like bringing your B game and they're bringing their A game. So it's like, hopefully it's exciting to you and you can get a vision for your own business. So
it's fun to push each other, though.
Mhm.
I don't want to say to our limits, but to push us to tap into something maybe we haven't done before.
Mhm.
And then we do it all together and we see just how good we are at what we do.
yeah.
And
Elevating
then
together is everything.
you build
Yeah.
that confidence, and then the next year you grow on that and you do even better than you did the year before.
Yeah.
It just allows, like, the thing I appreciate about you, Keri, is I feel like we can have honest conversations
Mm-hmm.
that are just communal and actually help the entire event, where we're like, it's not going to work. Like,
Mhm.
I wouldn't say that to everybody, because
Mhm.
some people might be like, who are you? Like, the thing
Right.
I appreciate about you is you're always like, I want to know those things,
Yes.
because it's going to help you do a better job and show my work off better. It's just, we get it. Like,
Mhm.
we're vets. We've been here a million times before.
Mhm.
We could take it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't have fragile feelings. Like, if someone's just like, don't do that anymore, it does this. Okay. Like, there's a certain level of trust
Yes.
I think that we all have with each other. And
Which
that's
is,
awesome.
I love
if you're
that.
listening, I just want that for you too.
Yeah. Everyone should have partners
Yeah.
like that.
No, and I actually do genuinely believe that, though. You
Yeah.
need to trust your vendor partners, and you need to know that you have their back, they have your back,
Yep.
and that synergy. I know we've talked about it a lot today, but that synergy leads to some of the
Yeah, and it's
very
not that
best-
they never work with anyone else. It's
No.
that, like, when you work together, you know what that you're pulling for each other.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that you are interested in the success of everyone. And I think that's a big one. So thank you so much, Keri, for coming on, dropping your wisdom and knowledge.
Thank
and
you.
if you've been listening, thank you so much for listening. And check out another episode. We got a whole back catalog. Head over to weddingfilm.school if you want to do consultations or submit a film or do anything like that. And of course, have an awesome season shooting weddings.